Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar put on by Goodwill Industries of Alberta. My name is Amy Hutton, and I'm an employer coach here in Calgary, where pronouns are she and her. I am excited for this webinar today. It's all about pronouns and why they're important and why we need to use them in our workplace to create that culture of inclusivity and to create a safer space for everyone to work. So give me a moment as I just get my slides ready here. So I want to take a minute even before we start and do a land acknowledgement for everybody. I want to take a moment and acknowledge that as a white settler, I was not here first. This land belongs to the Treaty 7 people, the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the Métis region of Alberta, districts 5 and 6. And I am always grateful to live, work, and play on their lands. So what we will be covering today is a piece about Goodwill and the EIA program. We'll learn about the rainbow alphabet, the introduction to pronouns, why pronouns matter in the workplace, and best practices to go along with that. How are we going to create an inclusive culture? Addressing common concerns and questions from people that I've heard, and resources for employers. The resources is actually 3 pages of resources for you all. I think you'll find it quite interesting. So about Goodwill. Goodwill Industries of Alberta is a local nonprofit that strengthens communities through donations of gently used goods. We support people with disabilities committed to sustainability. And this wheel here that you can see on the screen, yes, everyone thinks of Goodwill, oh, I donate my clothes, my items, and then I get to go shopping. You're right, you do. And there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. So you donate your clothes and then you go shopping. For every dollar that you spend at a Goodwill store, 92 cents of every dollar comes back into Goodwill for our programs and services to support people looking for work who live with disabilities or other barriers to employment. That money also goes towards training for employers with our Inclusion Accelerator Employer Program. And that program is where I work out of, and we offer free supports to employers on accelerating and improving their inclusion disability practices. So more about the Employer Inclusion Accelerator Program, EIA. We have a goal of helping and educating employers to be more inclusive at their workplace. We offer this by giving free resources, free support through going over policy reviews and optimizations, hiring supports, coaching for employers, community engagement, and connecting with resources. And this is actually one of the resources today is our Lunch and Learns, our webinars that are free for folks to attend. So a few stories I want to share, because some people have said to me, Amy, it's 2024. Do hate incidences still happen in Alberta and Calgary? Yes. The answer is yes. So Tara and I, the first picture here on the left, Tara and I had our traditional Celtic hand fasting in September 2023 in Bragg Creek at Kananaskis Provincial Park. And we did have a couple of looky-loos watching our ceremony from a distance. Yet luckily nothing happened, but we had that bit of a fear because we were worried we're out in the middle of the park, in the middle of public space, getting married or having our hand fasting ceremony. And I want to share an experience I had not long after I came out publicly. It was the time during COVID, and I was wearing that mask you see. It says Pride 2020 with a rainbow flag on it. And I was walking across the street in my neighborhood to go into a store, and somebody shouted and looked at me across the street and walked me watched me cross the street, and when I went by him, he said to me, "You're going to go burn in hell." Now I didn't feel safe anymore in my space, in my community, in my neighborhood. I was roughly 3 blocks from home when this happened. And fear of coming out at work, I did have a lot of fear because in history, people who were part of the LGBTQ2S+ community were fired because of it, and is now against the law to do so. Yet I still had this fear at my former employer because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't see anything in email signatures, on name tags, no pride celebration. And that fear continued at a different place of work when I was proposing to Tara. And there was no celebration, there was no card, there was no like, "Oh, yay, congratulations" kind of thing. Fast forward to 2022, when I worked at a different place of employment before coming to Goodwill, and it was an amazing experience. The CEO is a member of the 2S LGBTQ+ community here in Calgary originally. He now lives in Victoria, BC, and he got it, he understood. And people here at Goodwill, since I just started, have been really open and accepting and wanting to learn, which makes me feel good, helps me with my mental health. The most common way to talk about the rainbow alphabet is to use the acronym 2S LGBTQ+. The plus sign means that there are a couple more letters added after. So to break this all down for everybody, L stands for lesbian, women who are romantically and sexually attracted to other women only. G stands for gay. These are men who are romantically and sexually attracted to other men only. B stands for bisexual, men or women who are attracted romantically and sexually to both men and women. Transgender. This I know is a hot topic right now here in our province, so let me explain this to you all. Transgender can be separated into transgender men and transgender women. Trans men were born female and have transitioned to live male. Trans women were born male and have transitioned to live female. Many folks who identify as trans are in many stages of transitioning. Some people don't fully transition into the other gender. Some may also identify as gender fluid or queer fluid or non-binary, which means they identify as both genders depending on the day. Today, for example, they may present more female and tomorrow more masculine. Non-binary folks experience their gender identity and expression as falling outside the categories of man and woman. Many transgender people are prescribed hormones and or receive surgery to bring their bodies into alignment with their gender identity. Yet not all transgender people can or will take those steps, and a transgender identity is not dependent on physical appearance or medical procedures. The Q stands for queer and questioning. The word queer historically is seen as derogatory and a slur towards gay people. In the 1960s and 1970s, if you were called queer by protesters, it was seen as a negative. However, fast forward to 2024 today, and the word queer is being picked back up by younger generations to help describe themselves. I know for me, I don't use the word queer around elders because it could be triggering for them. Now, the other Q is questioning. Many people of all ages may question their identity of who they are and who they're attracted to. 2S or two-spirit stands for the traditional Indigenous word that they have used to describe transgender. History shows that Indigenous community embraced their two-spirit people, and many were seen as healers, shaman, wisdom keepers, and knowledge keepers. Intersex is the I. Intersex people are individuals born with any of several characteristics, including chromosome patterns, gonads, or genitals that, according to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, says that they do not fit the typical binary notion of male or female bodies. A term used to describe intersex people are contested and change over time and place. Intersex people were previously referred to as hermaphrodites. This term is no longer used, and terms including the word hermaphrodite are considered to be misleading, stigmatizing, and scientifically specious in reference to humans. A stands for asexual. This is the lack of sexual attraction to others, or low, absent in interest or desire for sexual activity. The P stands for pansexual. It is sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction towards people of all genders, or regardless of their sex or gender identity. Pansexual people may refer to themselves as gender blind, asserting that gender and sex are not determining factors in their romantic or sexual attraction to others. A few other things I want to make note that are not on this slide. You may have heard the term cis or cisgender. This is a term to describe people who are not transgender. For example, I'm a cisgender female who identifies as lesbian. The word transition can include coming out, using different name and a new pronoun, dressing differently, changing one's name and or sex on legal documents, and or gender affirming medical care. I also learned recently a few history moments about the rainbow alphabet. The 2S was put in front to honor and recognize that the Indigenous people were here first on this land. In history, the acronym used to be GLBT. Then the AIDS crisis happened in 1980 and 1990s, and many of the lesbian women who took care of the gay men as they were dying from AIDS in 1980s and 1990s, and to honor the women who saved many of the gay men, the L was put in the front. And finally, this pride flag here is the most current pride flag below, the original rainbow flag section with the addition of colors that represent the BIPOC community, the trans community, and the intersex community. All right, let's get into pronouns. This is how people self-identify with their gender. To help explain the difference between gender identity and sexual identity, gender identity refers to a person's internal sense of their own gender, which may be different from the sex they were assigned at birth. It's how someone feels and experiences their gender, whether that's male, female, both, neither, or somewhere in between. Sexual identity or sexual orientation refers to who someone is attracted to, whether that's people of the opposite gender, heterosexual, the same gender, homosexual, both, bisexual, or other variations. In short, gender identity is about who you are, and sexual identity is about who you're attracted to. Now, looking at the pronouns here on the screen, most men use he, him, and most women use she, her pronouns. Some people will use they, them, as they feel they cannot identify as either male or female. Some folks use a combination of both pronouns. For example, my wife uses she, her, and they, them because she lives with a mental health disability called DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. So to use these pronouns in a sentence, for example, I asked them what they wanted for dinner. She replied they wanted soup. And some people will also say they use all genders. This is happening when a person identifies as being non-binary or gender fluid. Now, the lesser known pronouns, or neopronouns as they're also called, we're going to start with Z and Zier, and I'll give you an example. I asked Zier to come to the movies. Z said yes. Z, Zier, or Z here. The teacher graded Zier's paper today, and Z got an A. Faye and Fair. Faye told me that Fair best friend is in town this week. And I just added the neopronoun, or the less common pronoun of it. It is a gender neutral, and it appears that younger people are using this pronoun more often. And there are plenty more. And these are the most common that we all will see, and then the less common pronouns that can be also seen, but not as often. So the easiest way to use pronouns at work is to introduce yourself to others using your pronouns, like I did at the introduction of our webinar here today. If you have guests visiting the workplace, for example, or having a meeting where team members are new to your business, take a moment to go around the meeting with the attendees and introduce yourself and your pronouns. For example, hi, my name is Amy. I'm an employer coach with Goodwill, and my pronouns are she and her. There are some cultures and countries where pronouns are not used. For example, the Philippines do not use pronouns as we do in North America. One of the main reasons why pronouns matter in the workplace is it helps everyone feel welcomed and that they have a sense of belonging. I know for me, when I see pronouns in an email signature or on a name tag, I feel safer to be open about who I am and how I identify. It helps me with my mental health, and I may be more willing to engage with the team around me and share about my wife. So to have some pronoun inclusion on where to have these things on name tags, email signatures, on websites where you have profiles of team members, print material where company profiles are displayed. If you make a mistake, first off, it happens and it's okay. If you misgender or use the wrong pronoun of the person and they correct you, thank them for correcting you, and then you self-correct. Be sure to do your best to use their correct pronouns when addressing them and in written materials. This is where those name tags with pronouns come in handy. We're going to watch a little video that helps explain this more fully for everybody about how to use pronouns in the workplace.
Pronouns are an important part of someone's identity. They're how a person is referred to, both directly and when being spoken of, which means it's very important that you're using the correct ones. We understand that sometimes that journey can be a little overwhelming to navigate, especially without the right tools to get you started. So that's why we've put together 5 workplace best practices around pronouns. Let's get started. Best practice number 1. Including your pronouns in your email signature or name at work where possible. Including your pronouns in your email signature or by your name at work fosters a culture of inclusivity and takes away the stigma of asking about pronouns. Not only does it make it easier for others to get to know you, it sparks conversations that you may have never been able to have before. Best practice number 2. Incorporate neutral language and greetings instead of gendered expressions like guys or ladies. When you start off a meeting or an email with verbiage like, hey you guys, or welcome ladies, it could be unintentionally hurting someone who does not identify with those gendered terms. Better expressions are, hey y'all, or welcome everyone. This way, all participants of the conversation feel safe and included. Best practice number 3. If you make a mistake and someone corrects you, say thank you instead of I'm sorry, or any other drawn-out apology. It's okay to make mistakes, but don't make others feel like they need to tell you it's okay or draw attention to it. We don't want those who we've accidentally used the wrong pronouns with to feel their identity is a burden in which they need to apologize for. Best practice number 4. Use they or their wherever possible as opposed to his or her. Non-binary people do not identify with the pronouns his or her, and it's important to be inclusive to them as well. For example, when writing a memo to employees about a new policy, employees should approach human resources with any question regarding his or her paycheck. Does not promote an inclusive workplace. A more inclusive way of writing this would be, employees should approach human resources with any questions regarding their paycheck. And finally, best practice number 5. Never ask about surgeries or medical status. While this one should be a given, especially in a workplace environment, it is often overlooked. You never want to put someone else in an uncomfortable or awkward position when asked about their medical status. You just don't know where someone may or may not be in their journey, and it's their decision whether they'd like to divulge that information to you. Keep in mind that everyone's journey is different, and it's okay to make mistakes. The important part is learning and growing alongside your friends and coworkers as we navigate into more diverse and inclusive work environments.
I hope you found that video interesting, and maybe you had a couple of aha moments as well. So the importance of mental health and pronouns at work. As I mentioned earlier, when I see someone with a name tag and they have pronouns on it, or I see it in an email signature, I feel a lot more comfortable. Now, I read a case study that has 34 people across Canada that are part of the 2S LGBT community, and they gave their voices in a study all about employment, labor market, and the experiences of sexual and gender minorities in Canada. They stated that they continue to face labor market and employment inequities, and that they are systematic and mutually reinforcing with those in other spheres. The employment experiences of those with whom they spoke with were commonly characterized by prejudice, discrimination, stigmatization, and exclusion. In addition to implications for mental health and well-being, participants articulated specific examples where these experiences inhibited their capacity to access and maintain and advance in their employment. The top 3 reasons why employers experience mental health struggles at work when they are a part of the 2S LGBT community are microaggressions. For example, if you say or you write down these words of "you don't look gay" or "you don't act gay," this implies that there is a specific stereotypical way that queer people are supposed to look or behave, and it invalidates the diversity of queer identities and experiences. It can make the person feel like their authentic expression is being questioned or judged because it doesn't conform to someone's preconceived notion of what being gay looks like. Prejudice. If you think or say or use Teams or text and put down or say that gay people are just trying to be trendy, or being bisexual is just a phase, this reflects a negative assumption that queer identities are not valid or are merely a temporary trend or confusion. It dismisses the reality of someone's sexual orientation or gender identity, reducing it to a stereotype or a phase, and it also undermines the person's right to self-identify. This kind of prejudice reflects as a broader social view that queer identities are lesser and not genuine. Finally, discrimination. This is when employers refuses to hire someone because they are openly gay, bisexual, or transgender. This is a direct form of discrimination, where someone's sexual orientation or gender identity is used as a reason to deny them equal opportunities in the workplace. It could manifest in situations like being passed over for a job, being harassed or bullied by coworkers, or being fired because of their identity. This type of discrimination is illegal in many places across the country, but it still does occur from time to time, and it contributes to the inequities and barriers for the queer individuals. Now, someone's asked me, what happens if employers don't address these above situations with their employees and don't create a safer space in the workplace for their 2S LGBTQ plus employees? Not being accepted at work, or the feelings of not being safe at work, as described above, could potentially lead to a person considering dying by suicide. According to the Centre for Suicide Prevention and the Canadian Mental Health Association, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people are 5 times more likely to consider dying by suicide, and they're also 7 times more likely to attempt to die by suicide. This is all about creating an inclusive culture, this slide. And to create a more inclusive workplace culture at your workplace, there are 3 areas to talk about and consider. Looking at the languaging beyond the pronouns. When addressing a crowd, instead of the typical ladies and gentlemen, use instead the ideas which are dependent of the room and the situation. For example, hello everyone, hello folks, hey team, hey guys, gals, and all my pals. or also welcome everyone or welcome all. Having gender inclusive signage on bathrooms and washrooms. Here in the Goodwill office where I work, our washrooms are singles room only use that has a door that locks and it has a sink in the room as well, so people can wash their hands after. If possible, have a rainbow sticker or flag in your welcome area in your business. Have an inclusive statement on your website, job postings, and in your welcome area of your business. Thinking about policies and guidelines, keep your guidelines for clothing neutral. Let team members know that they can wear business casual. For example, yet do not say men must wear suits and tie and women must wear skirts and dresses. I've actually seen this on a website. A place in Vancouver or Victoria has a dress code and it states that men must wear this and women must wear that. In your documentation of the guidelines, keep words gender neutral. For example, use team members, employees, instead of using he, her, or she, and him. Around the area of training and education, have someone come in from outside your business and share about DEIB, about the 2S LGBTQ community, and whenever possible, give them an honorarium. Become involved in the community. Are there events in the city that you can become involved in? This is where allyship as a business really comes into play. Many businesses say they are allies, yet do not show up when the 2S LGBTQ+ community really needs them. Allyship is not just during your city's Pride Week. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Having a list of resources and websites available for employees. And also be aware of important days in the 2S LGBTQ+ community and share about them. For example, National Coming Out Day, International Pronoun Day, and Transgender Day of Awareness and Transgender Day of Remembrance, which happened to be on November 20th, 2024. And educate your employees about these days and take part in activities and things around your city. Now, our country of Canada is a beautiful country, and it's a tossed salad of a beautiful people that come into the country every day. And there are some people that come to Canada who are part of the 2S LGBT community, and they have some reasons on why they come to Canada. Partly because they're fleeing their home country, because it's not safe for them to be fully who they are in their home country. Canada is in the top 3 countries of being safe to live, work, and play. There are worldwide 64 countries criminalizing homosexuality as of 2024. Most of them are located in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. In 12 countries, the death penalty is imposed, or at least possible for private, consensual, same-sex sexual activity. These countries are Iran, Northern Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Brunei, Mauritania, Pakistan, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Uganda. Now, same-sex relationships and sexual activity are not crimes under the federal law, and same-sex marriages are legal and honored with rights such as pensions, benefits, etc. Same-sex couples and individuals may adopt children. The 2S LGBTQ+ community can serve in the military and be open about their sexuality and their gender. There's a movie I want to recommend that you'll see in the resource section that's called The Fruit Machine. And this is the history about the gay purge that happened in the Cold War years, 1960s, 1980s, about what happened to people who were part of the LGBT community during that time. Now, regarding employment, discrimination and hate speech against the 2S LGBTQ+ community by an employer is illegal, and they cannot fire people for being a part of the community either. Transgender people can change their name and legal gender, and they can use the washrooms that they are most comfortable using. This is why some places of business, as I mentioned earlier, have single stalls with full doors that have a lock and a common sink to wash your hands in, or they are individual washrooms with locking doors and a sink in the room as well. Two organizations that actually help people flee their countries and come to Canada because their fear of being arrested for being a part of the 2S LGBT community are End of the Rainbow and Rainbow Railroad. And again, I'll have links to these two organizations in the resource section of our presentation today. Now, we're all human, and it takes time to learn and practice new things. If using different pronouns are new to you and you're okay and you're feeling uncomfortable, that's okay. It's okay to ask someone their pronouns, what their pronouns are when we first are introducing ourselves to each other. For example, at a networking event, you can say something like, "Hi, my name is Amy, and my pronouns are she, her. Do you have preferred pronouns?" As mentioned earlier, some cultures and countries do not use pronouns, so be prepared for that as well. Now, if you make a mistake on using the wrong pronouns of someone after they have already introduced themselves, first, say thank you for correcting me. Second, self-correct. And do your best to not do it again. This is something I want to recommend that you watch out for in your company. If team members keep misgendering someone, then that could be a potential problem. You may want to have some training offered for team members on this topic as well. And let us know here at Goodwill if you want support on this, and we can provide resources. And I'll also be putting in our resource section, you'll see our new referral partner, their information about, they do a lot of work on this area. I've also been asked a question about, what if a person uses more than one pronoun? What if you see in an email signature she and they? Then what do you do? The best recommendation for this is to ask the person, "Oh, I see your email signature and you have both she and they as a pronoun. Which one do you prefer us using?" As I mentioned, my wife Tara uses both she, her, and they, them, and I'll flip-flop when I talk about her. As always, please, when in doubt, ask the person. People in the 2S LGBTQ+ community are okay with people asking to learn and being respectful. This video we're going to watch is about words to use and not to use when talking about the 2S LGBT community.
Ever heard a word that made you cringe? I don't mean moist, phlegm, or lugubrious, although you should stop using those immediately. I'm talking about words that have history and context. As a result, they can either make a conversation very awkward or just grind them to a halt. Let's explore some terms that should be avoided when discussing individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning. Homosexual. I've heard it. Sounds pretty meta-science smartish. It's a big word, lots of syllables. Sounds proper. Don't use it. That official sound is actually part of the problem. Homosexuality was listed as a mental disorder until 1973. The term has been adopted by anti-gay extremists to suggest that lesbians and gay men are somehow diseased or psychologically disordered. Instead, use gay or lesbian. It's simple, but it works. Keep in mind that you don't need to label everything that isn't straight. Labeling something as homosexual, don't do that, or the preferred gay or lesbian isn't necessary most of the time. It infers those same activities, emotions, or relationships are not equal to straight relationships. As a general rule, if you wouldn't label something straight, don't label it gay. What else should be avoided? Phrases that imply sexual orientation is a choice, sexual preference. This phrase suggests that being lesbian, gay, or bisexual is a choice and therefore can and should be cured. The phrase gay lifestyle is used in the same way. There isn't a gay or alternative lifestyle. People who are LGBTQ don't share a lifestyle. Save lifestyle to reference the section where your local paper reviews the new restaurant in town. Let's review what to avoid. Homosexual, homosexual relationship, homosexual sex, homosexual couple, sexual preference, gay lifestyle, homosexual lifestyle, alternative lifestyle. Instead, refrain from unnecessary labels. If you really need to use the preferred LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender.
So that video always makes me pause because of one of the words that they use. They, in there, use the word preference. And for me, the word preference, it's not a preference to be a lesbian. It is who I am, it's how I identify. And, you know, when people have said, oh, it's just a preference, I'm like, I'm sorry, no, it's not. So yes, that little video was quite useful. So as I've said, we have 3 pages of recommendations for you all. The first page is the movie recommendations and the videos from this presentation that we just watched. Sex, Sin, and 69 is a history of the 2S LGBTQ+ community in Canada, and that is available for free right now on YouTube. Undetectable is a short documentary, approximately 30 minutes, and it's about the history of AIDS and HIV in Canada and the United States. And I actually have a friend of mine who is in this movie, and he speaks very openly about living with HIV and AIDS. The Fruit Machine, as I mentioned, it's the history of the gay purge in the Canadian military and the RCMP in the 1960s to 1980s. And unfortunately, it's only available right now on Prime in the USA. It used to be available for free on YouTube, and they took that down recently. Summer Camp is a documentary from 2023, and it's filmed at the YMCA Camp G-Factor, and it's about Camp Firefly, which is a summer camp for queer youth today to experience belonging, safety, and queer joy, and it's available on Hoopla and Tubi. I was actually part of this movie, Camp Firefly. I presented a workshop to the campers, and my piece was filmed, and I found out later that when the documentary team went to edit in 2022, the people had a hard time deciding what to take away from the movie because they had so much content. And my workshop, unfortunately, was also cut from the movie, and it's on the editing room floor. Yet it's really cool, and I really recommend people watching it. It's available on Hoopla and Tubi. The 2 videos we watched during the presentation are here below: the LGBTQ terms to avoid and the pronouns best practices. Some of these resources you may find helpful. Now remember, I talked about End of the Rainbow and Rainbow Railroad earlier. Skipping Stone is an organization that helps transgender and non-binary and two-spirit people with many supports in transitioning, employment, housing, counseling services. Our new referral partner, the Canadian Equality Consulting, is based here in Calgary and helps employers with DEI in a wide variety, not only the 2S LGBTQ+ community, but also Indigenous trainings and BIPOC trainings as well. Calgary Outlink is an organization that offers peer-to-peer support, phone helpline, meetup groups, and one-to-one mentoring. The Calgary Queer Arts Society hosts 2 events a year: the YYC Coming Out Festival, where folks from the 2S LGBTQ+ community get up on stage after weeks of practice and rehearsal and share their coming out story in monologue format. And they also do the Fairy Tales Film Festival, which is a multi-day movie screening festival that shows movies created by the 2S LGBTQ+ community. The movies are fiction, nonfiction, topics about the queer community, and actors who are part of the 2S LGBT community as well. Calgary Pride, Pride Center of Edmonton, and Pride Edmonton are resources for the 2S LGBTQ+ community in their respective cities. And finally, SafeLink Alberta is a resource for knowledge of HIV and AIDS, as well as their mission to reduce the harms associated with sexual activity and substance use by offering low barrier, non-judgmental, and informed programs and services. These are resources and websites for more reading about the employment in Canada in relation to the 2S LGBTQ+ community, as well as 2 articles about the sexual minorities on suicide. Remember, I spoke about the case study earlier in this presentation. This first link is that case study, and it's a good read. It's a long read, yet it's very well done. Now, this brings us to the end of our webinar, and I want to thank you all for joining and taking the time today to listen. If you want to connect with me to ask more questions, you can. My email is ahutton@goodwill.ab.ca, and you can also follow us on social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, because we have a couple more minutes, I want to back up a little bit and play the movie preview of The Fruit Machine. It's a powerful movie, and I always get a shiver when the last sentence is said from one of the people in the documentary. Just a moment, please.
You couldn't be gay. Simple as that. It was the worst thing that you could be.
So I'm sitting in the classroom, and then somebody knocks at the door,
He opened the door, there were 2 guys standing there, and they asked for me.
and they said, "Follow us." So I followed them outside.
And they blindfolded me.
Get inside the car. Slammed the door. They got in front, and they started driving.
They brought me to a shack that I still today don't know where it was.
They had this one program where they would look for places where homosexuals would assemble. And they came up with this map.
They were following us. They had read communications, and they were referring to phone calls, so they must have been listening on the telephone.
If they could design a series of tests to make a scientific determination, that would be the solution. And that's kind of where the Fruit Machine got really going. It was a crazy, crazy idea.
Stuff that happened in the military was in some ways sometimes more intense. Because you have to remember that this not only includes purging individuals, but a climate of violence.
Like in my head and my self-esteem, everything crashed. Because for me it was like, how can you do this? How can you do this to me? Didn't do nothing wrong.
Now, that movie, unfortunately, is not available here in Canada at the moment. It is on Prime USA, and I'm hoping it comes back to Canada for people to watch. It is really powerful, and I recommend people watching it. So I want to thank you all for being in this webinar, watching it today, and I wish you a wonderful day. If you do have questions or are an employer that want to become involved in the EIA program here in Calgary or in Edmonton, remember it's free and it's a 6-month program, and we work with you on your hiring supports, your disability inclusion supports for your company, all for free. I wish you all a great day, and I will see you again next time. Thank you.